What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi. That is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald.
There
Now
you
we
go.
now we've got a lot to talk about in this episode of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. When I say we got a lot to talk about,
The
uh,
Dolphins just scored again.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Not how many touchdowns did the Dolphins score last Sunday? It's like the
Man.
LeBron big three of me. Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five. The Dolphins scored 70 points in historic outing, a historic dominating performance, beating the Denver Broncos 70-20 in their home opener. They set a multitude of team records and NFL records. They were just 3 points shy of setting the NFL record for most points in a regular season game. They bypassed that option, a classy measure from Mike McDaniel after they beat up on the lowly Denver Broncos. But it was a historic performance that got the attention. Hey, we talked about it last week. We thought the Dolphins had the attention of the NFL world. They really had the attention of the NFL after that performance. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about whether the Dolphins were right to bypass that late field goal, as well as look ahead to another really big game in Buffalo, or in Orchard Park, I should say, against the Buffalo Bills. So we got to start with, again, that historic performance. I believe
70 smorgasbord.
yeah, I believe the team said that they broke or tied 13 team records in that game. You had Tua Tagovailoa completing his first 17 passes, only throwing 3 incompletions, 23 of 36, couple of touchdowns. He got the fourth quarter off, really, and then Mike White goes in there and connects with Robbie Chosen. You had a coming out party for rookie running back Devon Achane, who totaled 200 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns. And
Is
Raheem
it A-Chain or
Mostert.
A-Chan?
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I gotta.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
got
All
we got a new
right.
pronunciation. It's Devon A Chan, but we thought it was A Chain, but it's A Chan.
Because didn't they tell us the pronunciation guy was A-Chain and then
That's what I thought, but as of Monday or as of Sunday afternoon, it's Devon A Chan. And hey, we're gonna be saying his name a lot, so we gotta say it right. Four
that
touchdowns, and Raheem Mostert said, "Hey, you might be a rookie, but I'm a vet. 4 touchdowns as well." I definitely thought it was going to be a high scoring affair. I didn't think that one team was
oh, it's
going
gonna
to
be one team.
be scoring all the points. This was kind of the performance that you expected, but maybe not as lopsided. Wow,
Who does?
where to
Who
start?
did? 50. You beat a team by 50.
Yeah,
You in the NFL and yeah, you score 70 points. They yeah, I mean, no, the Dolphins did do what I thought this is what good teams do against. I'm sorry, as we discussed after we did last week's show. Yeah, it's a week to week lead, and Denver was weak the first week, they were weak the second week, and they were both at home. So what was going to happen on the road? And the Dolphins went out and took care of business against a team that you know you don't get 70 just on one side of the ball. Let's be frank. Denver did not look like they had any desire to be there.
yeah, I mean, the Dolphins scored on the third play from scrimmage. Like it was,
Yeah,
I don't think they
and
really had a
they
shot.
they were scoring in the fourth quarter. They weren't. The Dolphins weren't running it up. They were running plays,
It
running
was
crazy.
very natural flow of the game. I mean,
Yeah,
they went
this was.
for it on fourth down once or twice, but it wasn't anything crazy.
And also, if you have a big lead, and you're down deep on fourth down, actually it's almost insulting to kick the field goal because you know you probably gotta get the points. There's almost like, okay, we're running on fourth down, you stop us, and we move, everybody moves on. And they were still scoring. It was no, look, they did what they should have done, did what they needed to do. They are a very good team. And Denver is barely a team. They completely did not. They didn't show up, and I mean, this is one of the other 70-point games. By the way, is an all-time great offense was the 1950 Rams Colts game. The 50-51 Rams are the greatest, one of the greatest offenses nobody really remembers. but they had two Hall of Fame wide receivers, like the one everybody knows, Crazy Legs Hirsch. He wasn't even the better one. Tom Fears was actually the better one. They had two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. They had a bunch of big, fast backs. They, in the Cleveland Browns, were among the first teams to actually, sign black players. So they had a bigger talent pool than everybody else. And the Colts were not the Colts of that would become the Baltimore Colts and the Indianapolis Colts. They were the Baltimore Colts, but they were a terrible franchise, and they a terrible team, terrible franchise would be broken up. And so it was a case of great offense, really bad team. You have a potentially an offense that looks like it might be an all-time great offense, potentially, against a team that didn't care to be there. And you get 70 and 700 some yards of offense. But all credit to the Dolphins. They did their job to, almost the highest level. I mean, you can't blame somebody in today's NFL giving up 20 points when your offense is scoring 10 touchdowns. You just keep giving the ball back real fast. It's a lot of possessions. So you give a team enough possessions with, Russell Wilson, the quarterback, he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame someday, if not.
I thought he had a good game too. I mean, honestly, truthfully, I mean, I thought he played pretty well, but it's just like when you look up and you're down 35-10 at halftime, it's like how much can you do? So
yeah. So they did what they were supposed. They did what you should have done. But I mean, to that level of a curb stomp.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I asked several players. I asked Tua because I was like, "Hey, you've played at Alabama. You've been on the positive side of some lopsided victories. Have you ever seen anything like this?" And he said, "No, I have not." I'll start by saying this. I think this win and this game definitely says more about the Dolphins than the Broncos. Because again, I don't think the Broncos are a good team. But I don't think that like on a. I think that at the end of the season we'll see them as like a respectable team. Truthfully,
not on Sunday.
Not on Sunday,
Sunday.
but not on Sunday. But again, I don't think that I say this is more reflective of the Dolphins than it is the Broncos. And do I expect the Dolphins to score 70 points again? No, I do not expect the Dolphins to score 70 points again. But I think back to when Tyreek Hill was talking about the offense, and he's like, "Hey, year two of this scheme, adding Achane, having everyone back for year two, more continuity. The offensive line is getting more settled. Like, you can get scary." Like, I remember him saying that, and obviously a lot of times you think it's a little bit of lip service. But I truly think that we're in the midst of watching something special. And I know it's just 3 weeks. I know last week I said I think this is the best team in the AFC. But yeah, I think that this is a different. I don't know, like it just feels different. Like it feels different. You obviously you don't see 70 points a lot. But I was watching them, and I don't even remember. I lost track of which of the 10 touchdowns it was. But after one of the touchdowns, you see them break out into the conga line, and they're two-stepping and everything. And it just feels different. Like there's a joy with which they also play, like that's just like evident in all 11 players that's on the field. And I always kind of bring up like the 2019 season when I was in Baltimore covering the Ravens, and that season opened up, and that year opened up with an early season, just like an explosion. The first game of the year. I know a lot of Dolphins fans remember this. Lamar Jackson coming back home and putting up like 59 points against that team. And it came kind of out of nowhere. But as time progressed, like you just kind of got the feel like, all right, there were just moments where like, all right, there's something different here. And I'm just gonna get ahead of it. I think that this may be the beginning of something special. I'm not gonna say the SB word. You know what that is. I'm not gonna say that. But I think that this can be a very special squad. Something is just clicking for this group. Like I've talked about, this Shanahan offense being like really, really hitting its stride in year two. It's obvious that they're doing that. They're on a historical pace right now after 3 games, and I don't think that they're going to like stay on this pace, because that would mean that Tua throws for like almost 6,000 yards. But like, hey, when you put these numbers up, and again, it's a 3-game sample size, but we've seen them in the flow of a game in week 1 put up 36, and Tua just entirely do whatever they want, and then 2 weeks later do this. And keep in mind, he did this without Jalen Waddle. Waddle was sidelined, and that sideline one 20-mile-per-hour guy, 21, 22-mile-per-hour guy, and they bring up Achan, who didn't even really play the first two games, and he goes for 200. Now, again, I don't expect that every single week. I probably don't expect that again for the rest of the season. But this offense is different. Like I was just talking to somebody who wrote a book on like breaking down the offense last year. And he was saying a lot of the things that I'm seeing with my eyes. Like I did a film study on all the 10 touchdowns, and it's like they have the most unique offense in the NFL from scheme to personnel. Like he was talking to this person I talked to was talking about how they built off what the Shanahan, like the old school Shanahan style offense and what they did with the 49ers. And they just kind of like took it to the max with scheme and personnel, like the angles with which they run, they block for the run plays. Obviously, the speed just adds a different element. They're running motion at like on 59% of their plays. And that's like by far the highest rate. So they have Tyreek Hill running across the formation, running in the back of the formation, like that, like the strain that puts on defenses, like it's just unimaginable. I'm going to be very interested. We're going to talk about it in the second half of things, second half of the pod. I'm very interested to see how the Bills try to stop this offense, because this is probably the best defense. I know the Patriots have a really good defense and they held the Dolphins to 24 points. But right now, in terms of just like production and stats and counting stats and whatnot, the Bills defense is probably the best defense that the Dolphins is going to face to date. And shoot, Sean McDermott, the head coach, is saying it's almost revolutionary what they're doing. Like people, you're throwing out historic, revolutionary, unprecedented. I think we are potentially on the verge of something special. And I don't want to look ahead, but I just want people to enjoy it, because again, like when I was watching the Ravens, it's funny because it's very, very different offenses too. Like that 2019 Ravens offense that set records for most rushing yards in the season. They were doing it like ground and pound, zone read, whatnot. These guys are spreading it out, throwing the ball down the field in all different types of ways. And it's like, hey, you don't see stuff like this all the time. So I'm just, to Dolphins fans, like definitely enjoy this, especially after the years that have preceded it. I think we're on the verge of something special.
It could be. It very well could be a history. And yeah, the fact that they did that, they went for 70 without a receiver who would be a number one receiver on a lot
the
of
majority of teams.
And had they not signed Tyreek Hill, would be the number one receiver here. And it is really a statement. I think this is the obvious comparison for those of us Dolphin fans, or I mean, those of us who have a long memory with the Dolphins. Dolphin fans would probably, the older ones, probably think back to '84 when Marino's first full season as a starter. I don't know if there was a lot conceptually different that they were doing. I mean, you did Duper and Mark Clayton, the Marx brothers, both fast receivers. They weren't especially big, but they were, decent size, fast, good route run, ran the routes, did everything at very high speed. And the quarterback, Dan Marino, had just the fastest release anybody had seen. And his pocket presence was possibly better than anyone had ever seen. Even those, at one point they timed, and this is before everybody was running these shorter routes that kind of West Coast offense influenced, except for the 49ers who were running it, and maybe the Bengals. But they timed one deep ball in the AFC Championship game. He got it out in such a short time that Tony Dungy, who was a defensive coordinator at the time, heard the time, and he just went, I can scheme up somebody coming in unblocked, and he's not going to get there before that ball's gone.
Hey, we're seeing similar stuff here. Like Tua is getting the ball out in 2 seconds, and it's going like 10 yards down the field.
Right. Well, I mean, the Marino thing, I think it was like 1.9 seconds, and it was a kind of a deep route. And Marino, they say had the pocket presence, the speed of release, and the accuracy, to deep down the field to every length, whether you're talking 10 yards or 60 yards, that it just screwed defenses up. And he would later say, I think 10 years later, talking about it, said, yeah, he'd look up and he'd see receivers running free everywhere. It was really, he just, okay, pick your guy. Who do you want to hit on this play? And I remember talking to Peyton Manning in 2004 when he had the season that broke Marino's touchdown pass record. And he had, Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison, Brandon Stokely, a fast guy.
Did they have Dallas Clark back then too? I think maybe
Marcus Pollard was the tight end.
Okay, gotcha.
And Marcus Pollard said, "Yeah." He said, you said you come back to the huddle and you're like, I was open. I was open." He's like, "Yeah, but yeah, so was you threw to Marvin. I was open. Yeah, so was Reggie. So was so was Stokely. So was Edgerrin James out of the backfield, right?" And the difference is also, I think, one of the things that's different about this offense versus that, say, 84 Dolphins offense is, as well as they're throwing the ball, they're running
the ball very well.
And that 84 Dolphins team was a one-way team. They could not run the ball. They signed Pete Johnson, this immense fullback, late in the season for short yardage, and he had like 9 touchdowns, all of like 1 and 2 yards. But they couldn't run the ball. If you said, okay, you got to wear that clock out, they were like, okay, how about we just score a touchdown instead? The Dolphins are running the ball, and that makes them even more dangerous. And that, as an offense, and this is something we talked about last year. Hey, if you get your running game going, that really just makes everything super dangerous. And because you can't key on the passing game, you can't key on, and there's no hope of keying on the running game. What are you gonna do? You gotta stack the box and leave the outside guys one-on-one. Yeah, good luck with that. And the Dolphins do everything at a speed. They are playing fast with fast players, and like I said, that's what leads to it's not just blowing by guys. It leads to the mental screw ups where you get cheap scores. I mean, that first touchdown, nobody is there. That's not just Tyreek blowing past him. Yeah, that's a conceptual.
Yeah, Robbie Chosen was running across the middle on the other side, and the safety was like, "Hey, I gotta cover this fast guy," and you leaving. That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have Waddle in there, and he throw. I mean, Robbie Chosen he got some wheels too. So
you bring a guy at the practice squad and he scores over 60. I mean, experienced NFL wide receiver.
Yeah.
But not any normal practice squad player. But still, he's on the practice squad, and he torched him for
68 yards. Yeah.
And so when you're doing things like that, it is extremely hard to defend. And you're gonna, and if you're gonna have those days, and I think this was a day of, obviously, the Dolphins had one of those days where everything they did was working, and I think on the other side, the Denver's defense was, I think they were demoralized pretty early, and and then the offense turned the ball over a couple times. I'm sure the defense was like, really, we're not stopping them when they're starting at the 20,
25, 25.
Yeah,
starting at
right now you're having them start here. Great, let's that does not lend itself to a defense coming out and feeling like, okay, let's stop it, let's back our guys up. And they're like, no, they're like, yeah, whatever.
There's really only one mishap for the Dolphins. I mean, I think they went for it on their 34-yard early in the game and they didn't get it. It was funny. I think they ran like 4 straight run plays, and I guess the last 2 was a sneak by Alec Ingold, and then they tried to give a fullback handoff and they got stuffed. And I was like, yeah, it's the last time. I think the Dolphins are going to run 4 times in a row. Obviously, the defense kept them out of the end zone. They kept them out of the, even getting a field goal. They just punted, and after that, it's just kind of off to the races. So just one of those days for one of those days that you just won't forget. Like, at some point, it's like I didn't even know what to write. I mean, I look up and they're scoring more and more. So definitely one of those performances that you won't forget. And again, I don't think anybody in that locker room had experienced anything like that. They said it sounded like it felt like video game type stuff.
it was like it was a high school girls basketball score. It was
I said it
Miami
was like
Central.
Miami versus like Bethune-Cookman or something like that. Like
Yeah, it was Miami Central High School versus Miami Country Day High School. Okay, I mean that's it, it was that kind of score, and it's not something you see. Obviously, we haven't seen 70 points in the NFL game in
the 1960s. Yeah,
since 1966, and that was actually a back pocket. And the last that only got to 70 because this is a little historical note there. This is Washington versus the Giants. The Giants had 2 years earlier traded Sam Huff, Hall of Fame linebacker, Mr. Giant, to Washington, and Sam Huff was still mad about it. So they make a late interception. They're up 69-41. They make a late interception. The stories differ, but either Sam Huff like screamed instantly like field goal team and shot, to the surprise of everybody. And, there was a Pavlovian response, and then the field goal team runs on the field. Or Sam Huff convinced Otto Graham, yeah, go for the field goal. Let's stick it to him, because he really was angry at the Giants. And Otto Graham, who was the head coach, said, okay, yeah, sure. And they sent him out and they kicked a late field goal. That was exactly the field goal that Mike McDaniel passed up.
yeah. Less than a
So,
minute left. The Hard Rock Stadium crowd was chanting 3 more points.
yeah,
I guess they had known about the record. I don't think I guess well McDaniel knew about the record as well, but he opted to bypass that. Mike White took a knee on fourth down. They gave the ball back. It's funny kind of talking to different guys about it. Raheem Mostert was like, yeah. I kind of wish we did. I kind of wish we went for it. He said he didn't really know about it until late when he was talking to Jalen Ramsey, who was injured on the sideline. And he
right.
was like, "Hey, I wish we kind of kicked the field goal, but hey, that's respect too." It was like we're not trying to embarrass anybody. I don't mind it. There's less than a minute left. It's not like there was 5-6 minutes left. I get it. I don't think that kicking the field goal would have been showing them up necessarily because again, it's in the flow of the game.
You getting beat by 50. You getting shown up as it is.
Yeah,
Showing
but
you up
but
already.
Yeah, but credit to Mike McDaniel for
Yeah.
being classy. He talked about karma. He said, "Hey, if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd hope that the team would just kind of kneel in the game." So that's what they did, and they're moving on to a big game against the Buffalo Bills this Sunday. All right, we're gonna take a short break, but when we come back on the other side of things, after you put up 70 points, you put up a 70 burger. I mean, are you the best team in the NFL? We got to talk that when it comes to the Miami Dolphins. And then we're going to preview the big AFC East showdown against the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park this weekend. Stay locked with us, and we'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast with David Neal talking all things Dolphins. Now, in the first half, we broke down the Dolphins' historic 70-point performance in their home opener against the Denver Broncos. And while there was a lot of excitement about points, touchdowns, all the yards, and all the performances, the most important thing is that it moved the Dolphins to 3-0 on the season, and they are one of 3 remaining undefeated teams in the NFL, along with the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, before we get into this big game against the Buffalo Bills again, so 2 weeks ago, we talked about, was this the best team in the AFC East? Last week, we talked about whether this was the best team in the AFC, and you know what we got to do now. They're the only remaining undefeated team left in the conference in the AFC. They look really, really good doing it. Are they the best team in the NFL right now?
Ooh, they are the team that is put
They're the
together. Yeah, I don't know.
they're the
I would.
scariest team.
It,
They're
they're
the
the team
scariest
that's
team
put
in the
together.
NFL.
They are the team that's put together. They've had, I think, a good performance against San Francisco or San Diego or the Chargers, wherever the hell they are these days. The Chargers, they had a good performance against the Chargers, but they were solid against the Patriots, and obviously, just incandescent, off the charts, and nearly perfect against the Broncos. Almost historically perfect against the Broncos. So I think they're the only team that has three performances like that. I think that you can say that. But definitely in the AFC, the only team that's had three solid performances. That three performances that are at least solid. Everybody else has had
At least one
one
kind of
dog.
dud performance. Yeah.
Yeah, what they've had one. Everybody else had one dud, one dog, dud, whatever. And the yeah, the comparison with the 49ers, I think it's more the 49ers I would take over the Eagles.
I'd say the 49ers are probably right now they're looking more impressive than the Eagles. The Eagles have
Which
they've kind of had some not growing pains, but some turbulence. As they're coming back from
but
the Super Bowl.
and give the Eagles credit, they were dominant the other night in Tampa. So, and funny enough, we were saying, oh gee, the unstoppable Dolphins offense, and here's the 49ers coming in with a good offense and better than very underrated, tremendous defense. That 84 Dolphins team, by the way, was stopped by a 49ers team in the Super Bowl that had given up the fewest points in the league. And very few people remember that going into the game, that the 49ers had that kind of defense. But it's an offensive NFL now, and it's
Offense reigns supreme.
Even you need a defense, and it's I think most football people would instinctively still go with, if you got the great offense going against the great defense, they'll still tend to lean toward the great defense these days. And whenever that, even when the number one offense has been historically productive, if they play the number one defense, either scoring or yardage, it doesn't tend to go well for the offense.
I don't know. I'm just thinking about recent history. Last year we had the Chiefs play a great dominant Eagles defense, and Chiefs came out on top. A couple years back, the Chiefs faced the 49ers.
They were the dominant defense was the 49ers defense. They were actually statistically better than the Eagles defense. The Eagles defense
Chiefs beat the Eagles and Chiefs beat the 49ers. I'm talking about a couple years back in Super Bowl in Miami.
That was a very good 49ers defense. I'm talking like when you got number one offense against number one defense.
Fair enough.
That matchup tends to go even as the NFL has gone toward offense. That matchup has tended to go for the defense. Still in all, I think the Dolphins. I'll say, the Dolphins are the best team right now. Yeah.
You're like, oh, sure. We're working our way all around and finally,
also, on the flip side, I'm thinking, okay, now you got the Dolphins defense playing against the 49ers offense. I tend to like the Dolphins defense in that matchup. I like them. I don't like them like crushing them, but I like them to get a couple of turnovers. I like them to get the job done, at least to the level that they can hold the 49ers down enough for the offense to score enough points to win. So, yeah, I'll go with the Dolphins right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you know where I'm probably leading in this. I'd say this is the best team in the NFL right now. If they're not the best team, they're the scariest team in the NFL. Again, I don't think that this historic pace, I don't think the pace that they're on is going to be sustained over the course of the 17-game season. But I do think we can be looking at a potentially historic offense. And I think that honestly, I don't think this team is perfect. I do still have some slight questions about the defense because I think that the defense has been good. They've been solid in the first 3 games of the season, but I would say that in the first game of the season, facing a very good Chargers offense, they struggled against the run, they struggled against the pass, but they made timely stops, especially late in the game. Second week of the season, they played a Patriots offense that there's really not much to write about home about. That's kind of they looked good, which is
who writes home anyway?
Some people still might, but so I'll give them credit for that. They took care of business and they did what they should have done against a lesser offense. But the Broncos did move the ball against the Dolphins defense when it was kind of obviously like a lot of it was garbage time late in the game. But even in the first half when the game was still kind of fairly close, they were moving the ball around. Credit to an opportunistic defense, Javon Holland, getting 2 punch out, kind of Peanut Tillman type forced fumbles that stopped a pair of drives, especially late in the first half. So I'll give them credit for that. But I still do see a defense that's giving up some yards on the ground. I do see a defense that isn't always getting to the quarterback with its 4-man pass rush. I know I'm kind of nitpicking right now, but I would say that as we're going to transition into this talk about the Bills game, that's going to be a really interesting test, because I don't think that the Dolphins, if the Dolphins do score 70 points, so okay, sure, I'll stand corrected, but I don't think they're going to score 70 points. I do think it's going to be a much closer game this weekend, and seeing the defense in the natural flow of a game similar to week 1 and week 2, where they're not necessarily just kind of teeing off on the offensive line and they're playing a better overall offensive unit. I'm very interested to see how they do. Because again, I mean, obviously, if we're I don't want to look, I said I'm not going to say the SB word, but if we're looking to the playoffs, you're going to face very well-rounded teams. And sometimes, hey, the offense might have 2 straight drives where they have to punt or they just get a field goal, and the pressure's back on the defense. And I'm very interested to see how, and what I think is going to be a more back and forth game this weekend, how the defense does, because I do think that they're still not the unit that we're going to see by the end of the year. I still think that they're working things out. We saw them make a shakeup in the secondary against the Broncos. They took Eli Apple out. They moved Kader Kohu to the outside corner spot. They moved Justin Bethel, the veteran, inside to the nickel slot, and that looked like it's paying off well. But again, I don't think that defense is necessarily where they're going to be by the end of the year.
I hope not. And even though despite last Sunday, I think I think the offense will sit there and say, okay, yeah, you don't want to be, you don't want your September offense, showing up in December. You want to be even better. You want to be even more, it might seem crazy, but even more efficient, to where you can produce on at a high, a lot of points and a lot of yards on the road against a better defense in a different, in a different weather. And I'm sure that, the defense, wants, they want to see a better defense they've seen. But to be fair, okay, they didn't look great against the Chargers. That was not a good defense. That was a defense that made the plays when they absolutely needed to, but that wasn't a good defense. Patriots game, that was a better defense. Last Sunday, like I say,
a lot of it was garbage time. Honestly,
you're giving. They scored a lot of points on a lot of big plays and a lot of fast, kind of quick drives. There were a lot of possessions in that game.
That's true. Yeah.
And you can't, Denver's got some good off. I mean, I didn't think much of Denver as a whole overall team, but they've got some offensive players, and you keep giving them the ball in today's NFL, they're going to score eventually. They're going to put some points up. If you give up 20 points in an NFL game today with a normal number of possessions,
you're saying that's a good day.
You're like, okay, we can live with that. Yeah, our offense has to be able to score more than 20. Well, they gave up 20 points, and they were, they really gave up 13 because one of them was kickoff return.
One of them was kickoff. That's true. So, that's fair.
Yeah, you're going to give up some yards because they keep giving them the ball back after you score a touchdown in a few plays. So I actually think they, that performance, it was a pretty good performance. There's a lot of possessions, and a lot of it's garbage time, but it's not like the Broncos' first team offense isn't out there trying.
Yeah, shoot, they was out there until the final whistle. So
yeah. So, so yeah, you do want to see him maybe create a little more pressure on the quarterback um in throughout the game. Uh and this is gonna yeah, this I mean, this is obviously going to be an interesting, different test. The the Bills are a funny team. The Bills are kind of a funny team because they're so Josh Allen reliant. It's not just his arm, it's his legs, and not just scrambling, but running to gain a jackload of yards. He's going to be one of their leading rushers, and it's different than a Mahomes who he'll break off a 20-yarder or something like that occasionally, but he's really using his mobility to try to create time for his receivers to get open and then hit them. It just feels the Bills feel very, and I think it's part of the reason they kind of keep bumping their head on the ceiling they do in the playoffs is, I mean, okay, they did put up a lot of points in that freaky loss to Kansas City where the defense just let them down. But they feel, ugh, if Josh Allen just has a bad day, I don't think they don't have a backup. They don't have. There's no.
I mean,
There's not much going on there.
I think they might honestly, because of the way the season started with losing to the Aaron Rodgers less Jets on Monday night. Because of that, I think they're kind of flying under the radar, especially when you kind of couple that with the way the Dolphins have started their season. They won their last two games in blowout fashion, albeit against the Raiders and the Commanders. But
The same two teams, by the way, that Denver lost to, and I told you that's not looking good for you.
but still, in
They're doing, but
dominant,
they did that the right way though.
yeah,
They
in dominant fashion,
dominant right fashion.
and kind of to what you were saying. I mean, they've looked a little bit different doing it. I mean, they're actually running the ball really well. Josh Allen only has 12 carries so far. James Cook, younger brother of Dalvin Cook, South Florida native, he's running the ball really, really well. He's averaging 6.1 yards per carry. The Bills are actually top 10 in rushing yards per game, which we're not used to seeing. And it's not just like Josh Allen is kind of doing it all on himself. So they're looking a little bit different. Now, is that more indicative of the team that they are in 2023, or is that more indicative of the competition that they faced? I mean, we're definitely going to find out on Sunday. They're second in scoring. I mean, they lead the league in scoring, if not for the Dolphins. So this is definitely an offense that is still high powered. The defense is one of the best in the NFL right now. Obviously, they're going to be tested a lot by this.
I think, yeah,
This Dolphins offense. It's going to be interesting for me because obviously the Dolphins started their first two games on the road, but I think this is probably going to be the most kind of raucous environment. I mean, this is the game of the week for sure. Early game of the year kind of type deal. And one thing that stood out to me is that the Dolphins on offense, their clock and play operation has been very clean. I think they only have one or two pre-snap penalties. That's very impressive starting the year, two games on the road, only playing one game so far at home. So does that continue at Highmark Stadium, which is a really loud stadium that we saw how they had all the issues in the playoff loss a couple months ago. I'm very interested to see how that is. But to me, it feels kind of like week one. It feels like it's going to be back and forth, up and down, trading scores. And I'm going to go with the Dolphins right here. I mean, I honestly, it's hard for me not to pick the Dolphins after they put up 70 points. It's not like I'm really expecting them to put up 70 points. But yeah, so somebody like legitimately stops this offense and finds a clear plan and game plan to stop them. I think that they're going to put up a lot of points. I don't know if it's, Tua and the offense has the ball last or the Dolphins defense gets a big stop. Probably going to go the first one and the former and say that it's Tua getting the ball last. I think we're going to see a 34-31 type game back and forth, and the Dolphins move to 4-0 on the season.
I'm going to go with the Dolphins also. I think, yeah, I think they've, both the Bills haven't played a good team yet, frankly. I don't care what the Commanders' record is, and I've watched the Raiders the other night and watched the Raiders before that, and the no Jets with no Aaron Rodgers. It was inspirational win. I don't think that happens too often though. So I think the Bills. I think both teams. This is obviously going to be. I think this will be the best team the Dolphins play. Obviously,
For sure. Yeah.
But I just think the Bills. It's just looking at. I don't. I'm not. I think it's a real step up in class for both teams. I just think the Dolphins seem more ready for this than the Bills are, and I think that they had problems in the playoff game there. Also didn't help. They had a rookie
Third string,
third string quarterback. Even though no matter how much you go over things, that situation was what it was, and those problems were going to be inevitable. The Dolphins put up pretty good points there when they played in December, and I don't think hostile environment or whatever. Hostile environments when your marriage is going bad, you got to go home. That's a hostile environment. This is a football stadium. People, they're gonna be yelling and yelling and fussing.
They're not going to be throwing snowballs this weekend,
right?
Unless we get a random snowstorm. I don't think.
Once you get on the field, they're they can't throw the snowballs at you in the end zone when you're running the patterns there or whatever when you're lining up there. It's gonna be a high energy football game, and you're the road team. Everybody's been in that situation before. I don't expect the Dolphins to be rattled. I think they're going to be pretty well prepared for the atmosphere, both in a psychological and a very practical sense. I just think this right now, they are the better team. And so I'm going to take the Dolphins. Ooh. You went 34-31. I'm thinking like 38-34. Yeah. And I mean, it may even go 38-28.
That'd be a decisive,
that's not decisive. It's 10 points. That's
a convincing victory.
No, it's just 10
points is a convicted. Hey, I mean,
that's not convincing. It's a solid win. That's a solid win.
Solid road win against the AFC.
It's a solid road win.
That's a very convincing victory.
That's one more stop against the Chargers. I mean, that's what that is. It's
okay. I mean, hey.
So I'm not. It's not overstate things. But I think the Dolphins are the better team right now. So, I don't think, the difference between these two teams last year, and the home team won each time by,
2 or 3 points.
Yeah. By this much, so I just think, they should be ready. They're going to be, ready. It's going to be an interesting game, and it'll tell us it's going to be a yardstick game. We're going to find out. Okay, where are you now? Are you where you think you are, and where are you in relation to your competition? And everybody's going to walk out measuring, knowing, okay, this is who's the top dog now. This is who the best team is right now, and then everybody will try to catch up to the team that loses will be have it on their mind to catch the other guys for the rematch, and potentially a third game in the playoffs. So
Yeah, definitely a big opportunity right here. The Dolphins at 2-1, excuse me, the Bills at 2-1, the Dolphins at 3-0. Hey, they say the division games count for two. If you can win this game on the road, move to 4-0, you knock your divisional rival down to 2-2. The Dolphins are definitely entering this game with a lot of confidence. I asked Raheem Mostert after the Broncos game, what type of statement does this say about the team? And he said, hey, it says that we're nothing to play with. It puts a lot of other teams on notice that we're that team, to put it blunt. So they're entering Orchard Park with a lot of confidence this weekend, and we'll see if they can get the job done on the road again. All right, that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I want to thank you guys as always for tuning in. Reminder to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. We've got Tua, Mike McDaniel speaking on Wednesday, as well as several other players, assistants on Thursday, and then Mike McDaniel again on Friday, leading up to Sunday's game. We'll have a ton of updates, ton of content on the Miami Herald website. So subscribe and stay locked throughout the week. We'll see you next
Tell your
week.
friends. Tell your friends to listen to us too if you want us to, stay around and stuff.
That too.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week to recap another weekend of Dolphins football. But until then, you guys take care. Yeah.